Hi there. Welcome back to the Prolific Author Podcast. Today I have a really fun interview for you with author Tanya Karen Gough. She is not only kind of a middle grade author, but she's actually put together a really fun website called StoryBilder.com to help, budding authors of all ages to learn how to write, how to put a story together. And she's got lots of really great educational tools and organizational tools for authors. So in our interview today, we talk about a wide range of things. We talk about writing middle grade, how to write children as characters. We talk about her website and what she has to offer for authors. And she actually has a short story contest coming up in October of 2022. It's free to enter and they have really great cash prizes. So listen to the interview to get the details. And then I would encourage you not only to check out her website, but to hop over and maybe enter the short story competition. All right. So with that, let's get to the interview. All right, welcome back to the Prolific Author Podcast. We are here today with author Tanya Gough, and thank you so much for being here. I'm glad to have you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here.
Good, good. Why don't we start out by having you tell everyone who you are and what you write?
Yeah, so my name is Tanya Gough, as you said. I actually write under the name Tanya Karen Gough because, as some science fiction, fantasy aficionados will know, there's a writer out named Tanya Huff, which is Huff. The spelling is different, but my pronunciation of my last name is close enough that I write under Tanya Karen Gough so that people don't get confused.
Yeah.
I also write fantasy fiction. I've written 2 middle grade fantasy novels. They're literary infused action adventure stories for girls. And as well as a short story that I've had published in Amazing Stories magazine. And I'm also the owner and founder and developer of a platform called StoryBilder. That's BILDER. And it's designed to help new and emerging writers write their books.
Great. Yeah. So you've got a lot going on, and I really want to dig into a lot of that. So let's start with your writing a little bit. So I have not interviewed very many middle grade authors. And so I'm kind of wondering, how is writing middle grade different than writing YA or adult?
I think, well, I actually think of the series as being sort of a bridge series between middle grade to YA.
Okay.
But I think for me, I just really like writing into that sort of wide-eyed, sort of like, wow, the world is amazing and weird and strange and sometimes scary kind of mentality, which I don't think is a part of the YA genre. So YA is sort of a little more adult. It's talking more about relationships, and specifically, I mean, a lot with like girls with boys. And I didn't really want that to be part of the picture. Although there is actually a girl main hero in my series with 2 boys, but it's all sort of before all of that stuff happens. And I want a lot of what I do, and a lot of my writing tends to take genre and sort of turn it on its head. So I take those expectations that there might be a happy ending or relationships and sort of taking those out of the equations, and it becomes more about making friendship between genders. And I think that's a little more interesting to explore for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of, so you focus in terms of relationships on friendship instead of romance. That makes sense for the age group. Yeah. And then, I mean, of course, you have to sort of, I mean, I don't know the right way to put this, but almost dumb down the writing as compared to an adult, because you're not going to be using as big of words or as much detail. I mean, how do you approach that?
Actually, I think that I don't necessarily think that children's literature necessarily needs to be dumbed down.
Yeah, I don't think that's the best word for it.
I think we've had a big trend towards sort of oversimplifying for kids, and I think we're doing them a big disservice. I actually imagine that my series would be read. I've wrote my chapters so they could be read, at nighttime as a bedtime story, and you could either read like a chapter a night or half a chapter a night, that kind of thing. And I purposefully like make up impossible words so that the parents just can't pronounce them. So, I think it's, I think it's an important part of writing to younger kids is to challenge them and to challenge their assumptions that there's only one way for words to be, and there's only one way for language to be. I mean, the English language is in constant flux, and I mean, it barely means what it meant when I was a kid. Now, I mean, all the words have changed. It's just, it's kind of insane. But I think that there's a real excitement and energy to that. And I think kids in particular really sort of lean into it. So I try not to dumb down my language too much. I think that kids can handle quite a lot. I mean, I'm not going to use, like, a $5 university medical term in there.
Right, right.
But if I do, then it's going to be in the context of like a magic word that they're going to have to use. And now they've learned the word, but they just haven't learned exactly what it means.
So would it be fair to say, and the reason I'm asking all of this is that I write high fantasy, which is geared toward adults, but I do have a child character. And so I'm always trying to figure out how to write that child character in an authentic way. So would it be fair then to say that you use more just vocabulary that's on their level, like you said, none of these like, Joseph Conrad words or anything. And then you just go with having them be very excited about everything that they're experiencing, whereas adults wouldn't quite have that same type of excitement.
Yeah, I think heightened emotion is very much a piece of it. I think that when they're happy, they're very happy. When they're sad, they're very sad. When they're confused, I mean, the whole world just is literally spinning around.
Right.
And I think, and I sort of play into that. I sort of have a inner child voice with like, oh, hi, oh, look at the world. And I can sort of like, I almost write with that voice in my head. I know it's a horrible sounding thing when I say it out loud, but in my head, it's—
No, it sounds very childlike though.
And if I can sort of hold on to that feeling of that, like, why is this happening? I don't understand. That's interesting. That's scary. And if I can get myself into that mindset, then everything else sort of flows from there.
Okay. Yeah. I love that. So let's switch gears just a little bit and talk about your short stories. How did you get into doing short stories for a magazine?
Well, I've been writing short stories for a very long time. I write a lot in all sorts of different kinds of containers and shorts and forms. I'm a content manager in my day job. I've written textbooks. I've done business writing. So for me, short stories are something that I think for me, I enjoy for the discipline of them, because you're really sort of forced to tell a story in a very short in a short space. I think it's Faulkner who once said that people who are okay writers write novels, better writers write short stories, and truly great writers write poetry. Now you can argue as to whether or not that's actually true or not, but
right.
The point being that, the more distilled the art form, the more discipline is required, the more linguistic discipline is required to really craft your language, really craft the story, and make things work in a really short period of time. So I kind of enjoy it for that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I have a harder time writing shorter stories, and I kind of do it every so often just to sort of force myself to do the exercise. So I think, I write mostly novels, so I wouldn't agree with Faulkner, but I do believe he has a point, and I think it's something everyone should try to do every once in a while. All right, so tell us about your StoryBuilder then. Like you said, it's BILDER, no you, right? Just so
That's
people
right.
know.
All we're missing is you. Yeah, StoryBuilder is it's my site. So I've actually built the entire thing myself. I've been working on it for several years now, working part-time when I'm not working my day job or writing or doing a million other things.
Right.
But we got it done, and it's live now. And it's really designed for writers who are sort of new to writing, or people who have been who've been trying to figure out how to write on their own, but are struggling to figure out how to put all the pieces together. And I'm not looking to take over the role of, writing classes or one-on-one tutorials or any of that sort of thing. But I felt like there was a real opportunity to create narrative structure support that can help people to understand how stories are put together, and to help them get the framework of their story put together. And then what they do on the inside is entirely up to them. So I've built StoryBuilder. It's got 3 parts to it. There's a story engine, which is sort of more guided tour. It takes you through character building. It takes you through world building, and then you write your story, and you can do it, from beginning to end, or you can jump back and forth and sort of skip around if you want. But there are fewer options and alternatives. So if you're newer to writing and you just don't want to get overwhelmed by choice, then that's great. But then there's an underlying education layer to everything to help you understand like what's happening and why it's happening, and what's expected at each given part of your story as you go along. Then there's a toolbox, which has basically all the same stuff, but it's all blown open. You can jump in and do things as you want. There's more editing tools. There are charts and maps so you can see what you're doing in your story as it's coming along. And then there's a public library that's full of characters and maps and outlines from classic literature, as well as the your standard seven basic plots. and you can borrow any of those items and use them as a baseline for your story. Once you borrow them, they're yours to do with as you wish. So if you want to take them, if you want to break them, if you want to do violence to them, we don't care. So for example, if you wanted to start your story using the outline from Hamlet as your starting point, you can do that. But you can change up the scenes. We're just giving you the guiding arc, the story arc of the story, and then you can go in and break it. You can make it a comedy. You can change the scenes around. We don't care what you do with it. Once you've got that, throw in Dracula, see what happens.
Yeah, that's fun. That sounds like it would just be fun to go in and play around with. So, I mean, what does it look like if an author were to get onto your site? I mean, does it look like Scrivener? Is it like a template? Like what could they expect to see?
No, I tried to go very different. So for me, I think that the problem that I had was that a lot of the writing platforms and solutions out there right now either feel like they were created by developers who write, so they're very, very techy and very sort of technical, or they were created by writers who got some poor developer to come and try and realize their vision.
Right.
But because I'm a writer and a developer and also a former teacher, I felt like I had a sort of a unique way that I could spin the platform out in a way that would be really helpful. So I've tried not to overwhelm the writer with a lot of options and things to click on. Wherever you are in the story, as I'm building things out, you'll have access to the information that's relevant to wherever you are in that story. You can keep track of your characters and your locations and the time your scenes take place, so you can actually see where your characters are in time and place as you're developing your story. There's Google Maps, actually it's leaflet maps, but there are interactive maps on the platform that so if your story takes place on Earth, you can go in and you can actually put in Google coordinates or map coordinates into your locations. You can actually see where they are. You can drill right down to street level and walk around. So if you're writing something that takes place at, I don't know, 221B Baker Street, you can actually drill down and walk around and see what's going on like in the neighborhood and see where they're actually going. So you can get a more realistic sense of like where your locations are and what the environment's like. And then there are just sort of simple forms for your characters for, building out your profiles. We've got some set questions that you can use as a starting point, and then you can build out on top of that. Locations, again, just basic description points for reference. So if you have to go back and don't remember what you had said or what the history is or what the political landscape is like in your country, you can go back and just double check on that. And then everything else is just in a flow. So you get a editing page, write your story, you can go back and edit and change things as you go, and continue to keep track of things as they're happening. And because of the way the site is built, you can start in on the story engine or go to the toolbox or bounce back and forth, and it's all collecting all of your information organically. So you get a whole holistic view of your story and your project. So you can actually go back and see like where you're actually missing some information or where you might have taken things too far.
Yeah. So you kind of answered this, but so this is something they can type their story into, not necessarily that's something they would download. Okay.
Yeah, it's right now we're desktop only. We're working on, we're almost mobile friendly. But really, I mean, there's just sort of too many moving pieces to really be doing this sort of thing, like just typing straight into your phone. We'll build out separate apps for that later. So you can just sit on the bus and write your story, and then it'll upload to the mothership later. So how many people have you had go through this? Like how many, I don't know if you would call them students, but how many people that you know of are using this and having success with it? Well, we've got a few thousand registered users right now at the moment. I think we've got about 100 who are active users on the site. So we're still fairly new, and we're growing as quickly as we can. It's just, it's one of those things that takes time to build readership. It takes time to build platform and to get things where we need it to be. We are running a short story contest in October. So if anybody would like to come and check us out, there's no cost to enter. And we're looking for stories between 500 and 1,500 words. Submissions are open all of October. They close on Halloween night, as they should. And like I said, no cost to enter, and we have a sponsor for this one. So we've got over $4,000 in cash prizes.
Nice. And they just find that on storybuilder.com to enter?
Yep. Yeah. They just come to StoryBuilder.
Great, great. And can you talk about the price point for it, especially compared to
Yeah.
other things?
Yeah, I really don't think of our users as students. I mean, I think that people are simply writers who just need, they don't even need, they're just looking for something that's new and different, a little more dynamic, and that really understands how they think and can adapt to multiple approaches to writing, which I think, again, a lot of the traditional sites just don't do. So for me, it was really important that StoryBuilder be really accessible. I want to encourage people to try writing, even if they've never tried it before. So it needed a price point that would allow people to do that. So we're only $25 a year.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So we are looking to keep it cheap. And again, it's about accessibility for me. It's about making sure that people from less advantaged neighborhoods aren't going to be really put out, you shouldn't be putting out $100 a year to do your writing. That doesn't help, and it doesn't get you where you need to go. And plus, most of those sites, most of those platforms don't even have the educational piece to help you learn how to communicate better and to tell your story in a much more robust way. So.
Yeah. So can you compare this at all to other sites? Like, are you familiar with like Plotter? Is it similar to that, or do you know?
I think we have some similarities to Plotter. I mean, Plotter has more, is really sort of focused on the organization and the outline of your story. I really don't see us as replacing anybody in particular. I think that we sort of fit into a larger mix. And most writers I know use multiple tools anyway. They might use Scrivener for writing and use Plotter for just for thinking things through. And at $25 a year, I mean, it's certainly easy enough to throw us into the mix. But because of the way I've set up the site, I mean, there's nothing that says you have to use StoryBuilder to actually write your story. I've got script writers who are using it as a planning tool, for example, and this would be different from Plotter in that we're actually mapping sort of in 3D with your locations and your times and your characters, and you can see where everybody is and what's going on, which when you're doing screenplay writing, I think is a lot more valuable. And same thing goes for game developers. I've put in XML export for game developers so they can do their planning and then lift everything out and put it directly into their game environment and build around that. So
that's super fun. So what are your plans for the future? What do you have? What are you envisioning for it, in the months to come?
Just continue growth, really. The current contest is really our first sort of foray into the big world. We ran a smaller contest in February, just as a test run to see what would happen. But this one we're going, excuse me. Sorry, I just almost lost my throat there. But for this one, we're going all of North America. We have a sponsor, a really great academic writing school in Colorado called Writer's Desk is in with us. So we're doing everything from ages 13 and up.
Nice.
And just continuing to improve the site and make it more interesting and take over the world.
I love the idea of teaching this to younger children. I mean, I think, from what I remember of being, young, you learn the basics, like what a plot is and the rising action, but you don't really learn a whole lot about what creates the plot of a novel, so I really love the idea of teaching that to younger people.
And I think, I think it's a really important point because, sorry, I'm still losing my voice.
No, you're good.
Because in schools these days, they're just not really teaching. They're not even really teaching, creative writing at all. And a lot of teachers don't have the background or the experience to really know how to do it properly. Like you said, I mean, they might teach you a story arc, but that's an abstract thing that you don't really understand until you're in the middle of it. And it was really important for me with StoryBuilders to create an environment where you can experience all of that sort of organically. Without having to think about, here's my exposition and here's my rising action. That's all sort of taken care of for you, and you can drive your story in a way that sort of fits naturally into an existing outline. And if you want to break the outlines and do your own thing, you can totally do that too. So
right, yeah, I love that. And, in a lot of ways, you probably should break the outline sometimes just to stretch your creative muscles,
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm a huge fan of breaking the rules. But the thing is, you need to know what the rules are to begin with. You can't break the rules if you don't know what they are. So
right. Agreed. Great. Well, that sounds fabulous. Yeah, so hopefully people will go and check that out, and just, you know, if nothing else, is another tool and a chance to be able to enter the short story competition. I might do that myself. So what other advice do you have for up and coming writers who are just getting started?
Just do it. I mean, I know that's a really boring and sort of typical thing, but I mean, your book isn't going to happen unless you put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard or however it is, or, you know, however it is that you write your story. It just, you need to start someplace. And I think, you know, get rid of the idea that it's going to be perfect out of the gate, because it most certainly isn't. I like the bon mot that writing happens in the revisions. You know, get the story down, just figure out what the story is that you want to say, and then go back and make it beautiful. So yeah,
I love that. I love that. Well, thank you so much for being here and talking to us about this. And like I said, I hope everybody checks out your site. Where else besides that can they connect with you and your books?
StoryBilder is on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're StoryBilder everywhere except Instagram, because they like to be difficult. So we're we're a StoryBilder app there. And you're more than welcome to come and check us out. I do have a Facebook page and a Goodreads page for my writing, neither of which have been kept up to date, but they're they're out there, and I do respond if you reach out to me there. So
great. I will link all those up in the show notes. No, I know, actually, I was looking at my website, my writer website, just a few days ago and going, oh, wow, yeah, I need to update that.
Yeah, I haven't even updated my own corporate, my more personal consulting site in like a couple of years, and I was looking at it going, do I really want to?
Yeah, you learn real fast as a writer that even drag and drop websites are just not the funnest thing to be doing with your time.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. Well, great. Thanks again. And yeah, maybe I'll have you on again, you know, a few months down the road to see how StoryBilder's doing.
I would love that.
Great. Yeah. Well, good luck with everything. And, you know, thanks for everything you're doing to help young writers to learn to write stories, you know.
Thanks. And again, I'm a StoryBilder for all ages, so not necessarily young. And, you know, if you're just want to try out writing and you want a safe place to do it where you just need some extra support and some guidance, then we've got your back. So.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Tanya. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.